Hi, it's Ben from My Cycling Coach. I hope you're doing well and that you're having a great day. Wanted to check in with you today as I spoke to quite a few cyclists over the weekend about their winter rides that they're doing out on the road at the weekend at the minute. Now it's fantastic you're getting out, you're braving those cold conditions and still getting some good rides in. Heard a lot of guys had their sort of small group Christmas rides at the weekend as well, which is fantastic that you can start, you have been able to ride a little bit in a group again and obviously do a bit of a Christmas ride as well. But I noticed a common theme when I was speaking to a lot of the riders at the weekend in terms of they were saying, they were feeling that they were doing these rides, and obviously in the winter it can be quite harsh with cold temperatures. These rides do tend to be of a longer duration, so maybe 2, 3, 4 hours, and the routes can be quite harsh as well. And a lot of guys were saying that they were really feeling like after they'd done their ride, even 24 hours after, the legs were really sore, and they were really struggling with their recovery. So I would ask, how was your fueling during the ride and how was your post-ride fueling? Because these are two massive factors that play a huge part in both obviously your performance when you're doing the ride itself, but also the recovery time and how you actually feel after your longer ride that you may be doing at the weekend. And a lot of the time what I actually find is guys, when they're out on the bike and doing these longer rides, is that they're actually not fueling enough, certainly with maybe carbohydrate and the amount of carbohydrate they should be trying to target and take on during these 2, 3, 4 hour rides. It is absolutely vital that you are trying to have a real good hourly carbohydrate intake. So really, the amounts can vary a lot depending on the length, as I've mentioned, but also the intensity of the ride. But really, as a minimum, a real basic intake, you need to be trying to have 30 grams of carbohydrate per hour during these rides. Now, as the ride gets longer, if it goes into that 3, 4 hour bracket, you really want to be trying to push this up to 60 grams, if you can, of carbohydrate per hour. And you may even need to try and take on more if you really are finding that your performance is dropping as you go through the ride. Now, this also links into how you feel after the ride, because if you haven't been taking on enough carbohydrate, then you will find that your muscle glycogen, so your carbohydrate stores, will get really depleted. This is where you then will really feel that low energy, and there will be more damage done to the muscle if you're not fueling with enough carbohydrate on your ride. So it's really important that you do hit those numbers that I've just mentioned when you're out doing these longer winter rides. Then moving into the post-ride fueling, which again is absolutely crucial and will play a huge part in the speed of your recovery time, really. So when we finish our ride, within the first 60 minutes, a lot of guys, I'm amazed how they don't actually take on a specific amount of protein, a good quality protein, or they may actually leave it a few hours before they actually eat anything, or they may just have a small snack. So it's either they're having too little or waiting too long to actually get the right things into the body to help that recovery process. And what we want to be aiming for when we get off the bike, within that first 60 minutes if you can, is really a minimum of 20 grams of good quality protein, 20 to 30 grams. Again, there's a lot of different recommendations out there. Ride duration intensity will play a part in this as well, with to how much you should be having, but 20 to 30 grams of protein within that first 60 minutes is crucial to help that protein balance and get that protein balance back to where it needs to start helping that recovery process and rebuilding the muscle. Also, we need to make sure that we are replenishing those depleted glycogen stores. So we need to make sure that we're having some carbohydrate as well within that first 60 minutes of getting off the bike. Ideally, you want to be aiming for about 1.2 grams per kilo of body weight of carbohydrate within that first hour. Now, I would recommend maybe more simple-based carbohydrates just to replenish those stores as quick as you can. Doesn't really matter too much as long as you're aiming for that 1.2 grams of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight. And within that first 60 minutes. If you get that, that is really going to make a huge difference to that recovery process, and the body is already going to be able to start that recovery process and speed it up a little bit. Once you've done that within the first hour, you can then obviously maybe within 2 or 3 hours, you want to be then having your post-ride meal, which is hopefully is going to include, a good balance of protein, carbohydrates and fats, and also, micronutrients. And then going through in the next sort of 24 hours after the ride, you really want to be having small increments and small amounts of protein every 2 to 3 hours. And the recommended amount is really 20 grams. So every 2 or 3 hours after your ride, it might be that you rode on a Saturday, still going through to this morning, today being a Monday, that you want to be making sure that you're having 20 grams of protein every 2 to 3 hours. Obviously, you won't be able to do this in your sleep, but maintaining that sort of structure after your ride is really going to help that recovery process and allow you to get back to training in the week. You might have done this ride at the weekend and it could be taking you 2 or 3 days to then recover before you can actually then do another training session. So hopefully doing some of those tips, if you're not doing it, this is really going to change your recovery. So just to summarize, when you're on the bike, if you're doing 2, 3, 4 hour rides, you need to make sure you're hitting that minimum of 30 grams of carbohydrate an hour. Depending on the duration and intensity, you may want to push this up to the more 60 gram mark. You may also benefit as well for when you're doing those longer rides, taking on a little bit of protein from a sort of the hour and a half mark onwards as well, just to help that protein balance. And then the post-ride, as I say, when you get off the bike within 30 to 60 minutes, really trying to have 20 to 30 grams of protein and 1.2 grams of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight within that first 60 minutes, and then continuing to top up the protein stores every 2 or 3 hours with 20 grams of protein. Yeah, guys, little one there to try and help you starting the week with sore legs, hopefully, speed up recovery process, which will allow you to do maybe more riding in the week and feel fresher going into your next training session. Thanks for listening. If you found this useful, please drop a like on the post, follow, share, subscribe, and any comments, as always, if you found it useful, I'd love to hear from you. Have a great rest of your day, enjoy your riding, and speak soon.